Hello, my name's Dustin Atwood. A lot of you probably know who I am as far as if you're subscribed to the channel or you've seen this come through some kind of social media. And I greatly appreciate you hanging out with me. If you're new to the channel and this provides some value to you, I would love for you to consider kind of subscribing and giving me some feedback in the comments section. And that's what we're going to talk about today. You guys have done an awesome job. Really, the goal of this channel is to share some of the modern headwinds or changes in the automotive industry, as well as some of the just interesting things that I get myself into through my, day-to-day saying yes to pretty much everything. So what we're going to talk about today is going to be either, the being able to fix something or throw it away and buy a new one. Now, the last majority of my adulthood, if you will, it really phased away from repairing things and it went more into being more cost effective to buy a new one, discard the old one, and put the new part on there. And to a certain extent, it's still like that. And I've gotten some comments in the over the videos about that. And one of them, as you can see here on the channel, I've got a 3.5 EcoBoost F-150 that, we're going to attempt a pretty in-depth repair. We have the cylinder heads off of it right now. They're actually at the machine shop getting worked over. I'm intaking a whole bunch of parts, and we're going to reassemble that engine, and hopefully we have a good outcome. Now, this is not a customer's vehicle. This is one of my personal vehicles, and I can take the liberties on some of that stuff so I can develop processes that we can do here at A1 Custom on customer cars. Now, you might think, oh, you're a professional mechanic, you should know everything already. Well, if that were the case, I sure wouldn't be good at what I do, because the thing is with the automotive industry is it changes so fast. It's extremely dynamic, and we've done several videos, and I'm going to do some more videos on it. That is an open cylinder head deck design, which basically means there's not a lot of meat to keep the combustion in the combustion chamber and the cooling system separate, basically. And again, you can look at the other videos and actually see what I'm talking about there. So we are actually, in the aftermarket world, in my experience or my opinion, we are to be developing ways to deal with improper engineering from the manufacturer. Now, that engine typically lasts, until it gets out of warranty. So the manufacturer, that's what they're concerned about. When they design it, they want it to last to where it doesn't cost them money under warranty. And then after that, it's somebody else's problem. Now, they will have design changes. You'll have Gen 1, Gen 2. You'll hear people talk about that. And so it's not that I believe they're necessarily, doing that on purpose, but I do believe necessarily they're doing that on purpose. And not all of it is, malicious, I guess. Some of it probably is. But I think a lot of it is they come up with these designs, they beta test them. In their world, they have a tolerated failure percentage, and then they send it out into the world, and then you and I are left with, the outcome at 150, 200,000 miles. And some of the vehicles out there, they were actually designed, honestly, too well. And so I believe part of some of the great engines or great transmissions or great vehicles in general, the reason they went away is because they lasted forever. You see me do a fair amount of videos on the 7.3 Power Stroke. I think that's a prime example of a vehicle that lasts indefinitely with even a minuscule amount of maintenance, care, and repair. I've personally owned them up over 470,000 miles, and they were still viable enough that people drove hours and hours away to purchase that vehicle, and I would venture to bet it's still on the road to this day. That's one of the vehicles I probably regret selling the most, was my 03 Excursion with a 7.3, and it was full-wheel drive. Thing was an absolute dependable rock star beast of a vehicle, and it was so capable. I will have another one, but at some point, I can't keep all of them. So you have to let them go and revisit that down the road. But my thought process was actually some of the comments that came through on why I'm repairing this 3.5 EcoBoost, and they were valid comments for sure. One in particular was, basically pull that long block out, which would be, the rotating assembly, crank, pistons, rods, along with the cylinder heads, timing components. That would all be part or considered a long block itself. And you'll have a better warranty and you won't have any problems with it. And for a long time in my career, I absolutely believed and agreed with that statement. And if I could see a good engine remanufacturer that would stand behind their product, I would probably do that. Now, you have to consider a used engine for that truck is like $4,000. And again, buying used, you're buying somebody else's problem. You don't know how it was cared for. You don't know what was going on with that engine. So that's a risk. But at $4,000, that's not, if it was $1,500, yeah, I would probably do that. And a reman engine, depending on where you get it from and depending on how complete it is, it's anywhere from $65 bordering on, $85,000, $9,000, whether you incorporate turbos and fuel injectors and all that stuff. And right now, as of July of 2025, we do a fair amount of repowers, which in my opinion would be engine, transmission, transfer case, or rear differential. I understand the power plant is the engine itself, but a repower, in my opinion, is any of the drivetrain components when they give out, because typically those are high dollar, in-depth, intense repairs. The quality is not what it has been in the past, and I would much rather have the quality result be on me than maybe an engine rebuilder, manufacturer, used engine at that high price point. Okay. Now, even though I'm doing a lot of the work or rehabbing some of this engine itself, I'm going to have a lot of money and parts in it already. I can tell you that. But now I know and can control the quality of that rebuild. And depending on where you're at and depending on the manufacturer, I'm going to decide, as well as depending on the failure of the engine, I'm going to decide whether I'm going to go with a repower from somebody else, or potentially I can fix what I have and not just throw it away and get a new one. Okay. When I was a kid, there was pretty much a starter and alternator rebuild shop in most little towns. And now I can think of one here in Springfield. If you're around Springfield, Steve at Accurate Electric, and nobody's given me anything to say this, he's my personal go-to when I need a starter alternator rebuild. He has done some upgrades for me on some of my equipment starters. He's gone through some alternators, done some checks, made sure that they're in good shape. The guy has done an amazing job, and I really, I hope that he stays in the business or in the industry for as long as possible, because once he's gone, I don't know of another one around that I will have that opportunity. And a lot of times that's where I end up having to learn some of those skills and order some of those parts and, just kind of figure it out, because I don't have anybody to turn to. That's really what got me into doing a lot of the transmission service that you see here on the channel, is the fact that I would recommend them to transmission shops. And if you're a good transmission shop out there, I love you. That's great. But there's a lot of them out there that I have referred people to, and they left me hanging on it. Basically, it was a bad referral on my part. I'm like, well, if that's how they're going to do business, at least if I care and I give it all I've got, I'm probably going to have a better shot at getting a good outcome versus referring them to somebody that's just going to throw parts or always recommend a transmission. I'm not going to say that I don't recommend transmissions. I do, for sure. And that part of the business is becoming more and more prevalent, to where you'd get 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 miles out of a transmission. When I was a kid, some of the GM and Ford transmissions are not even making it to 100. You can see a video here on the channel with, I think it was a 2020 Suburban or Tahoe, that I put a unit in at 99,000 miles. To me, that's unacceptable. That unit was not fixable. It was a full overhaul, and it was more cost effective to get a reman unit put in there because of the failure that I was dealing with. Now, are there a lot of them that I will pull the valve body out of? And you can see that here on the channel as well. do some valve body work, replacement, whatever the case may be, and get that car or that vehicle many more thousands of miles without a transmission replacement? Absolutely. I've done that many, many times over the years after they've been referred to a transmission shop that all they want to do is put a whole transmission. So it really comes down to the point of failure, I guess, is what I'm getting at. So to bring it back to the 3.5 EcoBoost that we've got the cylinder heads off of, we had a chunk, so you have a valve in there, and there was a piece missing off the valve, so I had a drivability concern, a hard type A misfire on cylinder 1. We diagnosed that pretty quickly, decided what we were going to do, and weighed out our options, and decided to go this route. If it goes bad and blows up in my face, I'll put a video out there. I will show you guys that, hey, we should have bought a unit and put on here, and next time that's what I'll do. However, if I have a victory on this and it runs good, drives good, the repair lasts for a significant amount of time, then I'm going to consider that a win, and I'm going to consider that the proper procedure for this particular instance. Now, on these aluminum cylinder head, aluminum block engines, if this came in with a significant overheat, I would absolutely demand to get a reman engine and go at it with a new long block. To the commenter's point, you get a warranty. Not all companies are standing behind their warranties, unfortunately. As well as they're not all putting out the product of the quality that I would like to see. And so what's the difference if it had an overheat versus a valve issue? Well, I don't know if any of you have ever been out camping and threw an aluminum can in the fire, but you notice if you throw aluminum in the fire, it'll melt that can down, even just as a sheer campfire, because aluminum deals with heat differently than cast iron. Now, when I was a kid, I'm going to say predominantly the majority of the engines out there were all cast iron block and typically cast iron head. And there were a tremendous amount of head gasket repairs done successfully without having a premature failure afterwards or a repeat head gasket failure. As well as they weren't an open deck design. So basically there was more meat around the combustion chamber, so that head gasket had an absolute higher chance of holding together, keeping the combustion in and the cooling system separate. And that was a more viable repair when I was a kid. Now, as we talked earlier in this video, the industry changes very drastically. Now, I do have a machinist straight edge, and we are going to check everything once it's cleaned up. I'll probably do that tomorrow night. And I'll make sure that we have at least a deck, which is the top of the cylinder block, that is in tolerance to hold a good gasket and give me the best chance for a long-term repair. That's where I come from as the mechanic in me, is not only do I want to fix it, I want to make it as good, if not better, than the manufacturer did, so you get at least that many miles, if not more, out of the repair that I'm doing. That's what's in my mind when I make a recommendation for a vehicle of a failure and how and what we're going to do to fix it. I don't want to just fix it and get you on down the road a little ways longer and then you have a same or similar problem. I think there's a lot of folks out there that, they just want to patch it up and send it on. So in this case, we did not have an overheat. We had a drivability concern, which I visited on before. We're going to check it with a straight edge once I get it cleaned up. I've not got quite that far yet. I'll probably do some videos cleaning it up and showing the hot cabinet and how I go about cleaning and refurbishing some of the parts that I'm going to reuse. And then we've ordered a set of head studs for this truck. Now, that's kind of what I'm talking about giving you that repair that goes even a little beyond what would be normal on the vehicle. So most shops or most folks, if they decided to do what I'm going to do, they're going to order head bolts. And I've done that. But this particular instance, the weak point is that deck design. So I want as much clamping load as possible, and with head studs, and we are going to spend a little bit more money, they're roughly twice as much, to upgrade to a set of, and I'm using ARP. There are other brands out there, but ARP has been pretty much the staple or the benchmark, if you will. So I'm going to use those. We're going to reassemble it. And what my motivation in doing so is spend a little more money now, a little extra time, and give us a much bigger reward long-term on the backside. That's having that kind of, not basically looking right at the end of your nose, looking out into the future a little bit, trying to make sure we have the best chance for success as possible. I didn't video it. I didn't actually do the job, but I have a very good friend of mine who has a 3.5 EcoBoost that did blow a head gasket several years ago. Now, we sent the heads out like I'm doing now, and we head studded it, and we're probably about 3 or 4 years down the road, and we haven't had any problems with it. We do the oil changes, we do all the maintenance on it, everything's good, no problems there. Now, it was not an extreme overheat, it just literally blew the head gasket because it's a minute amount of material, and so we made a judgment call and took care of it, and I can confidently tell you 3 years later, all we're doing is oil changes on this truck right now. We did some brake work and whatnot, but long term, that has solved the issue for him, and I have some time with it to make the recommendation of what I'm doing now and going ahead and doing a head stud and getting the heads done. Now, we're going to get at least one valve done. We're going to get it all decarboned. I've sent the direct injectors off to a company. It's Injector RX out of Houston, Texas. They're going to go through the injectors, make sure they're in good shape, send it back to me. So I'm trying to stack the deck, if you will, for the best repair possible. And I don't want to just throw things away. Those injectors are another good example. I can have them refurbished. They're going to clean, make sure the spray pattern's good, make sure they flow equally, new seals, new O-rings, all the boxes for about $40 to $50 an injector. Well, that's half or a little less than half of replacing all 6 injectors. So you got to kind of weigh out and approach the problem not as a one-size-fits-all, in my opinion. What was my failure? What are my options to recondition, refurbish, reuse, or do I just replace? And I don't think that answer is a one size for everybody in every situation. So as a customer, it really helps me if you communicate at a high level and say, okay, this is what happened, this is what I did, and this is where we're at. And I can figure out, okay, hopefully what was the absolute root cause or concern? How did we get here? All right, well, in this instance, the corner of that valve burned off or broke off, and in my opinion, it was a manufacturing error or defect. Now, it's been too long, so they're not going to warranty it or, update or fix it. It lasted, I think this truck's got 160K on it, 168. And so they're not going to change anything. It was interesting when I looked it up on Ford. Now, this was an exhaust valve that was bad. The intake valve apparently must not have a lot of issues on these particular engines because the exhaust valve was twice as much money as the intake valve, which tells me that they're selling them and they're probably making more profit on that exhaust valve than they were the intake valve because they're moving. Side, just something I thought was a little ironic. We just did, or just about finished up, a 543 valve where I put camshafts, lifters, and followers in it. If you have a 543 valve, the passenger side head is typically, is the passenger side cam is typically the one that fails. Very seldom, if ever, have I ever seen a driver's side cam, and that's due to the way the oiling system works, that the passenger side cam is the end of the oil circuit on that engine, so it starves for oil. That camshaft was twice as much as the driver's side cam. So I thought that was, they're making their money where they can, and unfortunately I just have to pay it. You just have to pay it. And, make sure we're maintaining the vehicle to the best of our ability so we don't have those issues again. But that's not just Ford, that's everybody. I'm picking on Ford right now because that's the topic of discussion for today. But I want to know what you guys think out there. Do you miss the, throw it away and get a new one? We're having to revert back to that, in my opinion, because the replacement quality is so bad right now. And it's not just in the automotive world. I mean, it's in the clothes, the whatever it is. The manufacturing has really taken a dip over the last probably 6 to 8 years of that I'm more hesitant to just throw it away and get a new one than I was my first probably 15 years in the automotive field. My first 15 years, the cost of replacement was very reasonable. It was pretty cheap, honestly, in hindsight. I don't know that I felt like that then, but now I definitely do. And the quality was sometimes extremely higher than the parts that I was taking off. You look at the aftermarket, when they had a problem solver line, a lot of times they were fixing whatever my factory failed part was. And so I was big into the aftermarket at that point because they were doing a great job. Even the OE was doing a pretty good job. Now I'm looking for known good. Any of you that's ever been in the business and followed a flow chart, which is basically, hey, this is your problem, check this or this. Yes or no, go here. Check this or this. Yes or no, go here. It kind of, it funnels you to do your checkout to condemn your parts. And often in there, it would come down to replace with known good part. Well, if you're at a dealer and you have a parts department back there and you say, hey, I want this part, put it on there. If it fixes it, great. If it doesn't, we put it back on the shelf. I'm not at a dealer. And so I have to be more accurate on some of that. Now, there's some great dealer techs out there. I actually refer a fair amount of work to some of you out there, and I imagine you know who you are. But there are also dealers out there that are just turning and burning and not really diving into the diagnostics, which is what I and A1 Custom Car Care is very much about. So that known good part, I'm a lot more reserved at chucking a part away because, the aftermarket, this or that, is not the solution. I'm more inclined in today's climate, like I said, of July of 2025, that if I can recondition or fix a part that is performing well or maintain it to where it doesn't get to a point that it actually fails, that's in your and I's best interest because we're going to have the best outcome going forward. The days of just throwing it away and getting a new one and getting another 100,000 miles out of it, that's kind of a risky business right now. And so I'm personally, as far as A1 as well, we're pushing more towards a proactive approach and not just the throw it away and get a new one. So if you're in the need of a repower or a repair, depending on your case-by-case basis, we will make our recommendations for the longest repair possible. I love working repeat on people's vehicles because I get to know them really well as far as, okay, this person tows a lot, this person doesn't tow at all, this person is in town driving, this person is highway driving, and I can tailor approach to hopefully prevent you from these breakdowns or large repairs such as what we're talking about today. God forbid you get into one of those. I also have the R&D development side of me as well that has figured out, okay, this happens on this particular platform. How do we improve on that? And that's where my mindset is as of right now. Again, now if I had this same video or discussion, 10 years ago, I would feel differently and I would be sharing different information. If I watch this video here, maybe in another 5 years or 10 years, because I got a lot of time left in me in this business, I may feel differently then as well. We may have our own full-blown refurbished machine, engine side or transmission side. I don't know what the future brings for me on that side of it, but I'm committed to fixing cars. I've been doing this over 20 years at this point. I'm really to the point where I thoroughly enjoy the problem-solving side of it. the preventive side of it, we have people that do it both ways. They only call and make an appointment or come in when their vehicle's super broke. And we have large repair discussions. Some of them fix it, some of them don't. And then I have the other people that are really proactive. We do a lot of maintenance, and typically I don't have those phone calls or tow trucks show up at the shop where they've had a catastrophic failure, as well as they get years, if not decades, more life and hundreds of thousands more miles out of their vehicle than somebody that just turns and burns and has to replace it. So we're about 25 minutes in here. This was just my thoughts. I know I missed last week. I took a vacation, so I wanted to get some things done. I shared a couple videos with you all on it. I greatly appreciate you enjoying the content, and I really, absolutely, thoroughly enjoy, and to the best of my ability, I keep up on the comment section. You guys push my mindset, my thought, just as much as hopefully I'm intending to push yours. So thanks for hanging out with me. I look forward to visiting with you either in the shop or in the comments.